I spent $8,000 of my retirement savings on a family vacation that would bring my children and grandchildren together for the first time in 3 years. $8,000. Then my own son called me and told me I wasn't invited to the vacation I paid for. Let that sink in for a moment before I begin my story. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson, and at 72 years old, I thought I knew what family meant. I spent 40 years as a school principal, watching other people's children grow up, guiding them through their struggles, celebrating their successes. But nothing prepared me for the lesson my own family was about to teach me. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I made that phone call to Mountain View Cabin Rentals. The sun was streaming through my kitchen window, landing on the stack of bills I'd just finished paying: my mortgage, my utilities, my prescription medications. Everything in order, as always. That's how I'd lived my whole life, responsible, organized, taking care of everyone else before myself. I'd like to rent your largest cabin for the first week of July, I told the cheerful woman on the phone. It's for my family. We haven't all been together in almost 3 years. Oh, how wonderful, she said. Our mountain paradise cabin sleeps 12 comfortably. It has a full kitchen, a hot tub, and the most beautiful view of the valley. It's perfect for family reunions. A family reunion. Those words made my heart flutter with excitement. Marcus, my eldest at 45, lived 2 states away in Ohio with his wife Carmen and their twin boys, age 10. My daughter Angela, 38, was right here in town with her husband David and their 2 girls, ages 8 and 12. When was the last time we'd all sat around the same dinner table? When was the last time I'd heard all 4 of my grandchildren's laughter echoing through the same house? The rate for that week is $8,000, the woman continued. With the holiday premium and all, $8,000. I felt my breath catch for just a moment. That was almost 3 months of my Social Security and pension combined. But then I thought about Marcus's strained voice the last time we talked. How he'd mentioned money being tight with Carmen's mother's medical bills. I thought about Angela working double shifts at the hospital, barely seeing her girls. I thought about those 4 beautiful grandchildren who needed to know their family, to feel connected to something bigger than their individual struggles. I'll take it, I said without hesitation. How much do you need for the deposit? 20 minutes later, I'd put down $2,000 on my credit card. With the remaining $6,000 due at check-in, I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the confirmation email, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: pure, uncomplicated joy. I was going to give my family something precious. I was going to give them each other. I called Angela first. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear the chaos of her household in the background: cartoons playing, someone practicing piano, the general beautiful noise of a family home. Mom, everything okay? Everything's wonderful, baby. I have a surprise for all of you. I just rented a cabin in the Smoky Mountains for the first week of July. Big enough for everyone: you and David, the girls, Marcus and Carmen, and the boys. A whole week together as a family. The silence stretched long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Mom, Angela said finally, her voice careful. That sounds amazing, but did you talk to Marcus about this first? I wanted it to be a surprise. I know money's been tight for everyone, so I took care of everything. The cabin, I'll stock the kitchen. I'll even pay for the gas for whoever needs help getting there. I just want us all together. Another pause. Mom, that's incredibly generous, but… No buts, I interrupted, my excitement bubbling over. You work too hard. Baby, the girls need to know their cousins better, and Marcus needs to relax. When's the last time you saw your brother smile? Really smile? I could hear a sigh. I'll call him tonight and talk to him about it. Tell him I said he doesn't need to worry about anything except showing up. I've got it all handled. After I hung up, I spent the rest of the day planning. I made lists, activities for the kids, meals I could prepare, hiking trails that weren't too challenging for my aging knees. I even looked up local attractions, thinking maybe we could take the grandchildren to Dollywood or one of those dinner shows. That evening, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to tell her I'd be gone for a week in July. I called my doctor's office to make sure I had enough medication. I started a savings plan in my head, figuring out exactly how I'd manage the remaining $6,000 without dipping too deeply into my emergency fund. I went to bed that night with my heart full, dreaming of family dinners and bedtime stories, of watching my grandchildren play together, of seeing my 2 adult children remember why they used to be so close. 3 days later, my phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. It was Marcus. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice had that tone, the one I remembered from when he was 15 and had wrecked the car, or when he was 25 and had gotten fired from yet another job, defensive, uncomfortable, angry underneath it all. "Good morning to you too, son. Angela told you about the vacation." "She did, and Mom, we can't do this." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean you can't do this? Is it the dates?" "I can try to change." "It's not the dates, Mom. It's…" "Look, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but we can't keep letting you pay for everything. Carmen and I are adults. We need to make our own way." I sat down heavily at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd made that joyful phone call 3 days earlier. "Marcus, honey, it's not about paying for everything. It's about family. It's about spending time together while we still can. While we still can." His voice went up an octave. "Mom, you're 72, not 92. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic. The word stung more than it should have. I'd never been dramatic. I'd been the steady one, the reliable one, the one who solved problems instead of creating them. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. When was the last time we were all together? Christmas 2 years ago, and that was just for one afternoon. Maybe there's a reason for that, Mom." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, I found my voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means, look, Mom, you're wonderful. You are. But sometimes your help feels like you're trying to control everything. Like you don't trust us to handle our own lives." Control. The word hit me like a physical blow. 40 years of guiding children, of solving problems, of being the person everyone came to when they needed help. Was that what my family saw? Control. I'm not trying to control anything, Marcus. I'm trying to love you. I'm trying to give you something beautiful. But we didn't ask for it, Mom. You just decided what we needed and went ahead and did it. You always do that. I do that because I care about you. I know you do. But Mom, we need space to make our own decisions, to succeed or fail on our own terms. The spaces, our own terms. The phrases felt foreign in my mouth, like words from a language I'd never learned to speak. "So you don't want to come on the vacation?" "It's not that we don't want to. Do you want to come or not, Marcus?" The pause that followed felt like an eternity. "No, Mom, we don't want to come." I closed my eyes, feeling something crack inside my chest. "I see. And honestly, I don't think it would be good for anyone if you came either. We need some time as just the immediate families. Me and Carmen and the boys. Angela and David and the girls. Without the complications. Without the complications. Without me." "Are you telling me I'm not invited to the vacation I paid for?" "Mom, don't put it like that." "How should I put it, Marcus?" "Because that's exactly what you just said. We'll pay you back. It might take a while, but we'll pay you back every penny." Pay me back. As if money was what this was about. As if $8,000 could replace the dream I'd been carrying for 3 days. The vision of my family whole and happy and together. "I don't want your money, Marcus." "Then what do you want?" The question hung in the air, and I realized I didn't know how to answer it. What did I want? I wanted my son to want to spend time with me. I wanted my grandchildren to know their grandmother as more than just the lady who sent birthday checks. I wanted to matter to the people I'd given my whole life to loving. But I couldn't say any of that. It would sound needy, manipulative, dramatic. I want you to be happy, I said finally, and I meant it even though it was breaking my heart to say it. We will be, Mom. We will be. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen for a long time. The sun moved across the floor, the same way it had 3 days ago when I'd made that excited call to Mountain View Cabin Rentals. But everything else had changed. I was not invited to the vacation I had paid for. My family needed space from me. My love was seen as control. At 72 years old, I was learning that sometimes the people you'd die for would rather you just disappear. I didn't cry right away. That might surprise you. But after 40 years of being the calm in other people's storms, you learn to hold yourself together, even when your world is falling apart. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea Earl Grey, the same kind I'd been drinking since I was 25, and I sat at my kitchen table, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My son didn't want me at the family vacation I'd paid for. More than that, he thought I was controlling, manipulative, even though he'd never used that exact word. But I could hear it underneath everything he'd said. The house felt different somehow. Quieter. Not the peaceful quiet I usually enjoyed, but an empty quiet that seemed to echo with all the things I couldn't say to Marcus. All the ways I wanted to defend myself, but knew it would only prove his point about me being dramatic. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Mountain View Cabin Rentals. My finger hovered over the number for a long time. What was I supposed to say? Hello, I'd like to cancel my reservation because my family doesn't want me there. The humiliation of it made my chest tight. Before I could lose my nerve, I dialed. Mountain View Cabin Rentals, this is Jessica. How can I help you? It was the same cheerful woman from 3 days ago, the one who'd been so excited about our family reunion. Hi Jessica. This is Dorothy Johnson. I made a reservation for your mountain paradise cabin for the first week of July. Oh yes, Mrs. Johnson. I remember. The family reunion. Are you calling to add any activities or make changes? Changes, if only it were that simple. Actually, I need to cancel the reservation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched just long enough to make me uncomfortable. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. May I ask if everything is all right? Did something happen? How do you explain to a stranger that your family doesn't want you around? That your love has become a burden they need space from? There's been a change in our family situation, I said carefully. We won't be needing the cabin after all. I understand. Let me pull up your reservation and see what we can do. You put down $2,000, correct? Yes. Well, Mrs. Johnson, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that since we're still more than 30 days out, I can refund your deposit minus a $200 cancellation fee. The bad news is, well, I suppose it's not bad news for you, but we've already had several calls asking about that particular week. It's one of our most popular times. Popular times. Other families who wanted to be together. Other grandmothers who were probably welcomed and wanted at their family gatherings. That's fine, I said. Please go ahead and process the refund. Are you sure, Mrs. Johnson? Is there any chance you might want to reschedule for a different time? Maybe later in the summer when it's less busy. The kindness in her voice almost broke my composure. This stranger cared more about my family vacation than my own son did. I'm sure. Thank you, Jessica. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. The refund would take 3 to 5 business days to process. $1,800 back in my account. It should have felt like a relief. That was a lot of money for someone on a fixed income. Instead, it felt like failure. My phone buzzed with a text message. Angela. Mom, Marcus told me about your conversation. Can I come over after work? We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Of course, honey. The day stretched endlessly ahead of me. Usually, I had things to do, grocery shopping, lunch with my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, my weekly volunteer shift at the literacy center. But today, all I could think about was that conversation with Marcus. I kept replaying it, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Was I controlling? I thought about all the times I'd helped over the years. When Marcus and Carmen bought their first house, I'd given them $5,000 for the down payment. When Angela was in nursing school, I'd watched her girls every weekend so she could study. When either of them needed anything, car repairs, school supplies for the grandchildren, help with medical bills, I was always there. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe being always there had made them feel like they couldn't stand on their own. I walked through my house, seeing it with new eyes. The refrigerator covered with pictures of my grandchildren. The shelf in my living room lined with their school photos, their artwork, the little crafts they'd made me over the years. The Christmas ornaments they'd given me, still hanging on the artificial tree I kept up year round because it made me happy. Was this what Marcus saw when he visited? Not a grandmother's love, but evidence of my need to be needed. At 3 o'clock, I called the literacy center and told them I couldn't make my shift today. I'm not feeling well, I said, which wasn't exactly a lie. My heart felt sick, and that had to count for something. At 5:30, I heard Angela's car in my driveway, through the window. I watched her sit in her car for a moment before getting out, the way she used to do when she was a teenager and had to tell me about a bad grade or a broken curfew. She was gathering her courage, and that told me everything I needed to know about this conversation. "Hi, Mama," she said when I opened the door. She hadn't called me Mama in years. "Hi, baby. Come in." I made some iced tea. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd rocked both my children to sleep when they were babies, where I'd helped them with homework, where I'd waited up for them to come home from dates. Angela perched on the edge of the couch, like she might need to run. "Marcus feels terrible about this morning," she began. "Does he?" "Yes, he does, but Mama, he's not wrong about everything." The words hit me like cold water. I'd expected Angela to take my side, to be outraged on my behalf. She was the peacemaker in our family, always trying to smooth things over, but she was also my daughter, my baby. "What do you mean?" Angela rubbed her hands together, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "You remember when David lost his job 2 years ago? And we were struggling to make our mortgage payment?" I nodded. Of course I remembered. I'd written them a check for $3,000 without them even asking. "You showed up that night with the check." "Just showed up. We hadn't told you how bad things were, but somehow you knew." Mrs. Chen at the bank mentioned she'd seen David at the unemployment office. I put 2 and 2 together. "Right. And you helped us. You saved us, really. But Mama, you never asked what we needed. You decided what we needed and you provided it." I felt my defenses rising. "Would you rather I had let you lose your house?" "No, of course not. But maybe you could have asked how we were doing first. Maybe you could have let us ask for help, instead of just swooping in with solutions." "Swooping in? Is that what I did? When Marcus got passed over for that promotion last year," Angela continued, "you sent Carmen a $500 gift card to Target. Said it was for the boys' school clothes. Their boys needed clothes. But Marcus felt like you were saying he couldn't provide for his own children. Like you thought he was failing as a father. That's not what I meant at all. I know it's not. But that's how it felt to him. And Mama, you do it all the time. You anticipate problems and fix them before we even know they're problems. It comes from love, I know it does. But sometimes it makes us feel like you don't think we're capable adults." I sat back in my chair, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. Everything I'd done out of love, out of a desire to protect and provide for my children, had been misinterpreted. They saw interference where I saw care. They saw control where I saw generosity. "So Marcus is right, I'm too involved in your lives." Angela's eyes filled with tears. "You're not too involved. You're the most loving, generous mother anyone could ask for. But sometimes, Mama, sometimes we need to struggle a little bit. We need to figure things out on our own so we can feel proud of ourselves." And the vacation. The vacation was a beautiful idea. It really was. But it was your idea. You picked the dates, you picked the place. You made all the arrangements without asking any of us what we wanted, or when worked for us, or even if we wanted a family reunion at all. The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. She was right. I had decided what everyone needed and set about providing it, the same way I'd always done everything else. So now what? I asked. Do I just stop caring? Stop helping? Pretend you're not my children anymore? No, Mama. But maybe you could ask us what we need instead of deciding for us. Maybe you could let us come to you sometimes instead of always coming to us. After Angela left, I sat in my living room as the sun set. The house felt even quieter now, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not empty, exactly, but waiting. Like it was holding its breath to see what I would do next. I thought about the $1,800 that would be refunded to my account. I thought about the $6,000 I'd been prepared to spend on a family reunion that no one wanted. I thought about all the years I'd spent being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who solved everyone else's problems. Maybe it was time to solve my own. But first I needed to figure out what my problem actually was. Was it that my family didn't want me around? Or was it that I'd forgotten how to exist without being needed? As I got ready for bed that night, I made a decision. I was 72 years old. I had lived through raising 2 children as a single mother after their father walked out. I had earned a college degree while working full-time and caring for toddlers. I had spent 4 decades shaping young minds and helping families navigate their problems. I was not going to spend whatever years I had left begging for scraps of attention from people who saw my love as a burden. It was time for Dorothy Mae Johnson to remember who she was before she became everyone else's solution. I woke up the next morning with something I hadn't felt in years: curiosity about my own life. Not my children's lives, not my grandchildren's needs, but what Dorothy Mae Johnson might want to do with her day if no one needed anything from her. It was a strange feeling, like being in my own house but seeing it through someone else's eyes. I made my coffee and sat at the kitchen table, but instead of immediately checking my phone for messages from the family, or making my usual mental list of who I needed to call, or what problems I needed to solve, I just sat there. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore, it was spacious. I pulled out a notebook, the same kind I'd used for 40 years of lesson planning, and wrote at the top, "Things I want to do." Then I stared at the blank page for a long time. When was the last time someone had asked me what I wanted? When was the last time I'd asked myself? The phone rang. Angela. My old instinct was to answer immediately, but I let it go to voicemail, not out of anger, but because for the first time in decades, I was having a conversation with myself that felt more important than any conversation anyone else needed to have with me. After a few minutes, I listened to the message. "Hi Mama. Just checking on you after yesterday. Call me when you get a chance. Love you." Checking on me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now that I'd stopped managing everyone else's life, my daughter felt like she needed to manage mine. I went back to my blank page and started writing. I want to travel somewhere I've never been. I want to eat at a restaurant by myself without feeling like people are pitying me. I want to take a class in something I know nothing about. I want to go a whole day without worrying about anyone but myself. The list surprised me. I'd expected it to be full of things I wanted to do for other people, but these were purely selfish desires. When had I become afraid of being selfish? I was still writing when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Patterson from next door, holding a casserole dish. "Dorothy, honey," she said when I opened the door, "I made too much tuna casserole again. Thought you might like some." Mrs. Patterson had been bringing me extra food for 3 years, ever since her husband died. I'd always accepted graciously, even though I suspected she made the extra food specifically for me. But today, looking at her concerned face, I realized something: she needed to feel useful too, just like I did. "Thank you, Eleanor. Would you like to come in for coffee?" We sat in my living room, and for the first time, instead of asking about her health or her children, who lived across the country, I found myself telling her about the vacation situation. They said I wasn't invited, I finished, to something I paid for. The Linner set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. Well, I never. That's just ungrateful if you ask me. But maybe they have a point, I said, surprising myself. Maybe I do try to control things too much. Honey, there's a difference between caring for people and controlling them. You've been taking care of everyone else since you were practically a baby yourself. Your children don't remember what it was like when their daddy left and you worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. They don't remember you staying up all night when they were sick or going without new clothes so they could have school supplies. That was a long time ago, Eleanor. Time doesn't erase sacrifice, Dorothy. But maybe, she paused, choosing her words carefully, maybe it's time you did something just for you. After Eleanor left, I sat with her words. Time you did something just for you. The phrase felt foreign, like learning a new language at 72. I picked up my phone and, instead of calling Angela back, I Googled something I'd never Googled before: solo travel for seniors. The results overwhelmed me. Websites full of smiling older women and men exploring ancient ruins, sitting at sidewalk cafes, standing on the decks of cruise ships. When had I started thinking that adventure was for other people? When had I decided that my life was over just because my children were grown? One website caught my attention. Golden Years Cruises, adventure awaits at every age. I clicked on it and found myself scrolling through pictures of people my age dancing, laughing, exploring ports of call I'd only seen in movies. A 7-day Caribbean cruise, departing from Miami the second week of July. The same week I would have been in that cabin in the mountains, trying to force my family to want my company. The price was $6,000 for a suite with a balcony. $6,000. Exactly what I would have spent on the remaining cabin fee. I closed the laptop and walked away from it, my heart pounding. This was crazy. I didn't take cruises. I didn't travel alone. I was a responsible grandmother who stayed home and waited for visits and phone calls. But as I made myself lunch, a simple sandwich, because I only had to please myself, I couldn't stop thinking about those photos. Those faces full of joy and freedom and possibility. At 3 o'clock my phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hi, Mom. Hello, Marcus. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I wanted to, I don't know, explain better maybe. You explained just fine. Did I? Because I feel like I came across as ungrateful, and that's not how I feel at all. I sat down in my favorite chair, the one I'd bought myself after my divorce 30 years ago. The one that was perfectly positioned to catch the afternoon light. How do you feel then? I feel like, he struggled for words. Like I'm 45 years old and I still don't know how to be a man, because my mother fixes everything before I can even try. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't anger anymore. This was pain. I never wanted you to feel that way. I know you didn't. But Mom, when you paid for our house down payment, Carmen's mother made comments about how I couldn't even buy a house without my mommy's help. When you send those gift cards for the boys' clothes, the other parents at school functions talk about how lucky Carmen is to have such a generous mother-in-law while I'm standing right there. I'd never thought about how my help affected him in the world outside our family. I'd never considered that my generosity might be undermining his dignity with his wife, his children, his community. I'm sorry, Marcus. I truly am. I know you are, and I'm sorry too for the way I said what I said yesterday. You didn't deserve that. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said something that changed everything. What are you going to do with yourself now, Mom? Now that you're not planning our lives for us anymore? The question was asked with love, not sarcasm. And in that moment, I realized that my son was giving me permission to be selfish, permission to discover who Dorothy Mae Johnson was when she wasn't being everybody's solution. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm going to figure it out. Good, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It's about time. After we hung up, I walked back to my laptop. This time I didn't hesitate. I clicked on the cruise website and scrolled through the available suites. Ocean view suite with private balcony. Perfect for watching sunrises over waters I'd never seen. Perfect for having my morning coffee without anyone needing anything from me. Perfect for being alone without being lonely. I clicked, book now, and filled out the form with hands that shook slightly. Not from fear, but from excitement. Dorothy Mae Johnson, age 72, traveling solo to places she'd only dreamed about. When I got to the final confirmation page, I paused. This was it. This was the moment I stopped being everyone else's caretaker and started being my own adventure. I clicked, confirm booking. The confirmation email arrived immediately. Thank you for choosing Golden Years Cruises. Your Caribbean adventure begins in 85 days. 85 days to become the kind of person who took cruises by herself. 85 days to learn how to be selfish in the most beautiful way possible. I printed out the confirmation and put it on my refrigerator, right next to the pictures of my grandchildren. Let them represent two parts of my life, the love I'd given, and the joy I was going to discover. Then I called Angela back. Hi, honey. Sorry I missed your call earlier. I was busy booking a cruise. A cruise? Mom, what cruise? A 7-day Caribbean cruise. I leave in July. The same week we would have been at the cabin, actually. Silence. Then, are you going with someone? Yes, I said. I'm going with someone very interesting. Someone I haven't spent nearly enough time with lately. Ooh, myself. For the first time since this whole thing started, I was the one who got to surprise someone else, and it felt absolutely wonderful. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity, but for the first time in years, it was activity centered entirely around me. I threw myself into cruise preparation with the same thoroughness I'd once applied to lesson planning, except this time, every decision was mine alone. I bought my first passport at 72 years old. Standing in line at the post office, surrounded by young people heading off to study abroad or honeymoon in exotic places, I felt both ancient and newborn at the same time. The clerk, a sweet girl probably my granddaughter's age, looked at my application and smiled. Your first passport? How exciting! Where are you going? A Caribbean cruise, I said, and the words tasted like freedom. Oh, that sounds wonderful! Are you celebrating an anniversary? No, I said, standing a little straighter. I'm celebrating myself. Shopping for cruise clothes was an adventure in itself. I hadn't bought anything for myself that wasn't practical in more years than I cared to count. My closet was full of sensible shoes and comfortable pants and blouses that hid the fact that I'd gained weight and lost muscle tone. Grandmother clothes, caregiver clothes, invisible clothes. At Macy's, I found myself in the cruisewear section, staring at bright colors and flowing fabrics that seemed designed for a different kind of woman. A confident woman. A woman who expected to be looked at and admired. Can I help you find something? The saleswoman was about my daughter's age, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. I need clothes for a cruise, I said. But I don't really know. I've never. First cruise, I nodded. Solo travel or with family? Solo. Her whole face lit up. Good for you. I love seeing women your age taking adventures. You're going to have the most amazing time. Let me help you find some things that will make you feel as beautiful as you are. 2 hours later, I walked out with more new clothes than I'd bought in the past 5 years combined. A flowing sundress in coral that brought out the warmth in my dark skin. A navy blue cocktail dress for formal nights, comfortable walking sandals and a pair of heels I hadn't worn since my principal days. A hat that made me feel mysterious and sophisticated. At home I tried everything on again and took pictures of myself in the bedroom mirror. In the coral sundress, I looked like someone I barely recognized. Not young, I wasn't trying to fool anyone about my age, but vibrant, alive, ready for whatever came next. Angela called that afternoon while I was researching shore excursions online. Mom, I've been thinking about this cruise thing. I could hear the worry in her voice. What about it? Well, you've never traveled alone before. Are you sure you'll be safe? What if something happens and no one knows where you are? The old me would have appreciated her concern, maybe even been touched by it. The new me recognized it for what it was, the same protective instinct I'd been inflicting on my family for years. I'll be on a ship with 3,000 other people and a full medical staff. I think I'll be fine. But Mom, what if you get lonely? What if you don't like it? Then I'll deal with it. I'm 72, Angela, not 7. I've been taking care of myself for longer than you've been alive. I know, but… Honey, I interrupted gently. How do you think it feels when I worry about you all the time? When I try to solve your problems before you've even asked for help? There was a long pause. Point taken. I need you to let me do this. I need you to be excited for me instead of worried about me. Another pause. Then, in a smaller voice, I am excited for you. I'm gonna miss having you available all the time. The honesty of it hit me right in the chest. That's what this was really about. Not safety or loneliness, but the fear that if I learned to live my own life, I might not be as available to live theirs. I'll always be your mother, baby. But I can't always be your solution. I know. I'm trying to understand that. It's an adjustment. After we hung up, I thought about that word. Adjustment. Like I was a thermostat they'd gotten used to having set at a certain temperature, and now they had to learn to regulate their own climate. The next week, I signed up for a beginning Spanish class at the community center. Para preparar por mi crucero, I told the instructor in my first attempt at the language. To prepare for my cruise. Que maravilloso, she responded. How wonderful. The class was full of people my age and younger, all learning for different reasons. Some had grandchildren who spoke Spanish. Others were planning trips to Spain or Mexico. A few, like me, were just tired of not knowing something they'd always wanted to know. For the first time since I could remember, I was the student instead of the teacher. I made mistakes, mispronounced words, confused verb tenses, and it felt glorious. There's something humbling and exhilarating about being a beginner again at 72, said Ora Johnson. The instructor said after my third class, you have natural instincts for the language. Have you considered taking the intermediate class after this session? After my cruise, I said. I want to try out my Spanish on real Spanish speakers first. Excelente. Practice makes perfect. 3 weeks before my departure, Marcus called. I was in the middle of organizing my travel documents when his name appeared on my phone. Hi, son. Hey, Mom. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. Carmen and I have been discussing your cruise. My heart sank. Here it was, the intervention. The attempt to talk me out of my adventure because they decided it wasn't safe or appropriate or what a grandmother should do. What about it? Well, we were thinking, we know the cruise isn't cheap, and we feel bad that you're spending all that money because of us. Because of what I said about the cabin. Marcus, I'm not taking this cruise because of anything you said. I'm taking it because I want to. Are you sure? Because if you're doing this to prove a point. What point would I be proving? I don't know. That you can be independent. That you don't need us. The questions revealed so much about how he saw me, how they all saw me. As someone who would spend $6,000 on a vacation just to make them feel guilty. As someone who couldn't possibly want adventure for its own sake. Marcus, let me ask you something. If your friend from work told you he was taking a Caribbean cruise, what would you think? I'd think that sounds awesome. I'd be jealous. And if your neighbor Eleanor told you she was going on a cruise? Same thing. So why is it different when you're 72? Your old mother does it. Silence. Because, he said finally, I've never seen you do anything just for yourself. It's weird. Well, get used to weird. Because I'm just getting started. I could hear him laughing, and the sound made my heart lift. Good for you, Mom. Seriously. Good for you. Thank you. And Mom, send us lots of pictures. I want to see you having the time of your life. 2 weeks before departure, I got my hair done. Not just a trim but a real style change. I asked my hairdresser, a young woman named Kaisha who'd been doing my hair for 5 years, to make me look like someone who belonged on a cruise ship. Miss Dorothy, you sure about this? This is a big change. I looked at myself in the mirror, the same face I'd been looking at for 7 decades, but somehow different now. Expectant. Ready, I'm sure. She cut 6 inches off my gray hair and shaped it into a chick bob that framed my face. She showed me how to use a curling iron to give it volume and movement. When she was done, I looked 10 years younger and completely transformed. Who is this glamorous woman? I asked my reflection, and Keisha laughed. That's the Miss Dorothy who was hiding under all that worry about everybody else. 1 week before the cruise, I had dinner with Angela and her family. The girls were fascinated by my travel plans and peppered me with questions about the ship and the islands we'd visit. Grandma, are you going to swim with dolphins? 8-year-old Maya asked. I might. Would you like me to take pictures if I do? Yes. And can you bring me something from each place you visit? Of course, baby. Her 12-year-old Zoe was more skeptical. Aren't you scared to travel by yourself? What if something bad happens? What if something good happens? I countered. What if I meet interesting people and see beautiful things and discover parts of myself I never knew existed? She considered this. I guess that would be pretty cool. It would be very cool. David, Angela's husband, raised his glass of sweet tea. I think what you're doing is brave, Miss Dorothy. I wish more people had the courage to chase their dreams at any age. It's not courage, I said. It's selfishness. And I'm finding out that a little selfishness is exactly what I needed. The night before my departure, I sat in my living room surrounded by my packed luggage. 2 suitcases full of new clothes and new possibilities. A carry-on bag with books I'd been meaning to read, and a journal I'd bought to record my adventures. The house felt different again, not empty but expectant, like it was proud of me for finally learning to live in it, instead of just existing in it. I called both my children to say goodbye. Have the most amazing time, Mom, Angela said, and call us when you get back. I want to hear about everything. Take lots of pictures, Marcus added when I called him. And Mom, thank you. For what? For showing us what it looks like when someone chooses themselves for once. I think we all needed to see that. At 10 o'clock, I got into bed early, knowing I had a 6 a.m. flight to Miami. But I couldn't sleep. I was too excited, too nervous, too alive with possibility. At 72 years old, I was about to have my first real adventure. And I was going to have it entirely on my own terms. The last thing I did before closing my eyes was look at the cruise confirmation on my nightstand. In 12 hours, I would be Dorothy Mae Johnson, solo traveler. Dorothy Mae Johnson, student of Spanish and seeker of sunrises over foreign waters. Dorothy Mae Johnson, the woman who finally learned that loving herself was the greatest gift she could give her family. Tomorrow, my real life would begin. The ship was even more magnificent than the pictures. Standing on the dock in Miami, looking up at 12 decks of gleaming white steel and glass, I felt like I was about to board a floating city designed entirely for joy. The Caribbean princess stretched longer than 2 football fields. Her decks alive with colorful banners, and the sound of steel drum music floating down from somewhere high above. Welcome aboard. The crew member who checked my boarding pass was probably younger than my youngest grandchild, with a bright smile and a name tag that read, Carlos, Barbados. He handed me a ship's map and a daily schedule. First cruise, first everything, I said, and he laughed. You picked a good one. 7 days of paradise coming right up. My stateroom was on deck 8, suite 8147, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. When I opened the door, I gasped. It wasn't large by house standards, but it was perfectly designed. With a comfortable bed, a sitting area, and sliding glass doors that opened onto my own private piece of the Caribbean, I stepped out onto the balcony and felt the warm Miami breeze on my face. Below me, the port was bustling with activity as supplies were loaded and passengers continued to board. Above me, the sky was the kind of blue that made you believe in possibilities. I unpacked slowly, hanging my new dresses in the small closet, arranging my toiletries in the marble bathroom, setting my books on the bedside table. When I was finished, I took a picture of myself on the balcony and sent it to both my children with the message, "Day one and already in paradise." Angela responded immediately, "You look beautiful, Mom! Have the most amazing time." Marcus took a few hours, but his response made me smile. "Look at you, world traveler! Save me some sunshine." The mandatory safety drill brought all the passengers to their muster stations on the outer decks. I found myself standing next to a woman about my age with silver hair and the kind of tan that spoke of a life spent outdoors. "First cruise?" she asked, noticing how I was studying the life jacket instructions, with the intensity of someone who'd spent 40 years reading emergency procedures to schoolchildren. "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "Honey, we all had a first time. I'm Ruth, from Phoenix. This is my 8th cruise, and I can tell you, the safety stuff is important, but you're going to be fine. These ships are floating cities with more safety features than most buildings on land." "I'm Dorothy, from North Carolina. Solo traveler." "Solo traveler," I confirmed, and saying it out loud gave me a little thrill. "Good for you. I started cruising alone after my husband died 3 years ago. Best decision I ever made. You meet the most interesting people when you're not attached to someone." After the safety drill, we were invited to the Lido deck for the sail away party. I hesitated in my stateroom, suddenly overwhelmed by the choice. I could stay in my room, order room service, and watch the port of Miami disappear from my private balcony. Or I could go upstairs and be around 3,000 strangers. The old Dorothy would have chosen room service and solitude. The new Dorothy put on her coral sundress and headed for the elevator. The Lido deck was transformed into a Caribbean festival. Steel drums played while passengers danced and laughed, and took selfies against the backdrop of Miami's skyline. I found a spot at the railing and watched the crew cast off the massive ropes that had been holding us to land. Exciting, isn't it? Ruth appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of something pink and tropical. "Thought you might like a rum punch. It's traditional for sail away." I accepted the drink and took a cautious sip. It was sweet and strong and tasted like vacation. "Thank you. I've never had rum punch before. Another first. I love it. Here's to new experiences and the courage to chase them." We clinked glasses and watched Miami grow smaller as the Caribbean princess moved toward the open ocean. The city's skyline sparkled in the late afternoon sun, and I realized I was leaving not just the port, but everything familiar about my life. For the first time in decades, no one knew where I was or what I was doing. No one needed me to solve their problems or anticipate their needs. I was completely, beautifully alone with my own choices. That first evening, I dressed carefully in my navy cocktail dress and the heels I hadn't worn in years. The formal dining room was elegant beyond anything I'd experienced: white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in crisp uniforms who treated every passenger like royalty. I was seated at a table for 8 with other solo travelers and couples from around the world. There was Margaret, a retired teacher from Scotland, James and Patricia, celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, Giuseppe, a widowed chef from Italy, and Sarah, a young woman who'd given herself a cruise for her 30th birthday after a difficult divorce. "So, Dorothy," Margaret asked as we shared stories over the appetizer course, "what brings you on your first cruise? How do you explain that you're here because your family needed space from your love? That you're celebrating the discovery that you're more than just someone's mother and grandmother?" "I'm celebrating my independence," I said simply. Giuseppe raised his wine glass. "To independence, the most expensive thing in the world, but worth every penny. Salute." The table caroused, and I felt something warm spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. After dinner, there was a welcome show in the main theater. I found myself sitting between Ruth and a couple from Texas, all of us laughing at the comedians and applauding the singers and dancers. When the show ended, Ruth invited me to join her and some other ladies at the piano bar. "I don't really drink," I protested. "Neither do most of us. We go for the music and the company. Come on, Dorothy. You're on vacation. When's the next time you're going to get to sing Piano Man?" with a bunch of strangers in the middle of the Caribbean. She had a point. The piano bar was dimly lit and cozy, with a talented musician who took requests and encouraged audience participation. I found myself singing along to songs I hadn't thought about in years, laughing at jokes told by people I'd just met, and feeling more relaxed than I had since I could remember. At 11 o'clock, I excused myself and walked back to my stateroom. The ship's corridors were quiet now, with just the gentle hum of the engines and the occasional sound of laughter from someone's balcony party. In my room, I changed into comfortable pajamas and stepped out onto my balcony with a cup of tea from the hospitality tray. The ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, dark and mysterious under a canopy of stars I never saw at home because of the city lights. I thought about my family. Angela was probably getting her girls ready for bed. Marcus might be helping his boys with homework or watching TV with Carmen. They were living their lives without needing me to orchestrate or improve or fix anything. And the world hadn't ended. I took out my phone and composed a text. Day 1 complete. Had rum punch at sail away, made new friends at dinner, sang Piano Man at the piano bar. I'm learning that I'm much more interesting than I thought. Love you all. The responses came quickly. Angela: Mom, you sound like you're having the adventure of a lifetime. So proud of you. Marcus: Piano bar? Who are you and what did you do with my responsible mother? Love you. I laughed out loud at Marcus's message. Who was I indeed? I was Dorothy Mae Johnson, solo traveler. Dorothy Mae Johnson, rum punch drinker. Dorothy Mae Johnson, woman who sang with strangers and made friends at dinner, and watched the stars from her own private balcony, in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. I was 72 years old, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to gentle sunshine streaming through my balcony doors and the sound of water moving past the ship. We were at sea, somewhere between Miami and our first port of call in Cozumel, Mexico. I ordered coffee from room service, and took it out to my balcony to watch the sunrise. The ocean was calm and endless, painted in shades of gold and pink by the morning light. Dolphins suddenly appeared alongside the ship, racing through the wake and leaping out of the water, as if they were performing just for me. I grabbed my phone and managed to capture a video of their graceful dance, then sent it to my granddaughters with the message, "Good morning from your grandmother, the dolphin whisperer." Maya's response came quickly, "Grandma, those are real dolphins! That's so cool! Are you swimming with them today?" "Not today, baby. Today I'm exploring Mexico. But maybe tomorrow." I spent the day at sea exploring the ship. I attended a Spanish conversation class, where I practiced ordering food and asking for directions with other passengers, preparing for our Mexican port. I took a line dancing lesson where I learned that my 72-year-old hips still remembered how to move to music. I joined Ruth and her group for lunch at the buffet, where I tried sushi for the first time in my life. "Not bad for raw fish," I declared, which made everyone laugh. That evening, as I got dressed for dinner, I looked at myself in the stateroom mirror. My new haircut was holding up well in the sea air. My skin had a slight golden glow from the day's sunshine. But more than that, there was something different in my eyes, a brightness I hadn't seen in years. I looked like a woman who was enjoying her own company. I looked like a woman who belonged exactly where she was. At dinner, I told my tablemate about the dolphins and the dancing lessons and the sushi experiment. They shared their own daily adventures. Giuseppe had given an impromptu cooking demonstration in the ship's culinary center. Margaret had won $25 at the casino, and Sarah had signed up for every shore excursion available in every port. "Life is too short for maybe later," Sarah said, raising her glass. "Here's to saying yes to everything." "To saying yes," we all echoed. As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about that toast. For 72 years, I'd been saying yes to everyone else's needs, and no to my own desires. I'd said yes to sacrifice and responsibility, and putting others first. I'd said no to adventure and spontaneity, and the simple pleasure of doing things just because they made me happy. But on this ship, In this perfect floating bubble of possibility, I was learning a new vocabulary. Yes to rum punch, and yes to making friends with strangers, and yes to singing in piano bars, and yes to watching dolphins race alongside my breakfast balcony, and yes to the radical notion that Dorothy Mae Johnson deserved to be delighted by her own life. Tomorrow we would dock in Cozumel, and I would step onto foreign soil for the first time in my life. I would practice my Spanish with real Spanish speakers and maybe buy something beautiful just because it caught my eye. And back home, my family would continue to learn what I was learning, that love doesn't require sacrifice of self, that caring for others starts with caring for yourself, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is the example of a life fully lived. I fell asleep to the gentle rocking of the ship and the sound of the ocean carrying me toward tomorrow's adventures. Cozumel, Mexico, was a revelation. The moment I stepped off the ship and felt foreign soil beneath my feet, something shifted inside me. The air smelled different, salt and flowers and spices I couldn't name. The colors were brighter than anything I'd ever seen. The ancient Mayan ruins of El Cedral stood like monuments to civilizations that had thrived long before I was born, long before my grandchildren would draw their last breath. Standing in that sacred place, surrounded by history that put my 72 years into perspective, I felt both infinitely small and powerfully significant. I was Dorothy Mae Johnson from North Carolina, and I was also a citizen of the world, a woman capable of crossing oceans to stand where ancient peoples had once worshipped their gods. "Se ora, Gilagusta." The tour guide, a weathered man with kind eyes, asked if I liked the ruins. "Sí, me gusta mucho," I replied, proud of my Spanish class pronunciation. "Yes, I like it very much." He beamed at my effort. "You speak Spanish very well for a tourist." "Estoy aprendiendo," I said carefully. "I am learning. We are all learning, Segura. Every day, something new." Ruth had decided to spend the day shopping at the port markets, but I'd chosen the historical tour because I wanted to understand this place, not just visit it. Now, as I listened to our guide explain the spiritual significance of the cenotes, the sacred underground pools, I was grateful for that choice. The Maya believed these waters connected the earthly world to the spiritual world, he explained. They were places of transformation. Transformation. The word followed me as we walked through the jungle paths, past tropical birds that flashed like living jewels through the canopy. I thought about my own transformation, how I'd jumped into the unknown waters of independence, and found myself swimming instead of drowning. At lunch in a local restaurant, I ordered in Spanish and successfully navigated a conversation with our waitress about her children. She was amazed to learn I had grandchildren in North Carolina. "You travel alone to see the world?" she asked in accented English. "I travel alone to see myself," I replied, and she nodded as if this made perfect sense. My intelligent, very smart. The best journeys are always to discover who we are. I bought gifts for my grandchildren at the local market, carved wooden dolphins for Maya, colorful woven bracelets for Zoe, small Mayan calendar replicas for the boys. But I also bought something for myself, a beautiful silver necklace with a turquoise pendant that caught the light like captured ocean. "For you, Seora, this stone brings courage and new beginnings," the elderly woman selling jewelry told me as she fastened it around my neck. "Perfect," I said. "That's exactly what I need." Back on the ship that evening, I called my family while sitting on my balcony as we sailed toward our next destination. The girls were fascinated by my stories of the ruins and the cenotes. "Grandma, did you really talk to people in Spanish?" Maya asked, her eyes wide. "I did, baby. And they understood me? That's so cool. Can you teach me some Spanish words when you get home?" "I would love to teach you. We can learn together." Angela appeared on the screen, and I could see she was in her kitchen, probably cleaning up after dinner. "Mom, you look, I don't know, different, happy in a way I haven't seen in years. I feel different. I feel like I'm remembering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed." "The kids have been asking when you're coming home," she said. "They miss their grandmother. And I miss them." But Angela, I'm not ready to come home yet. I'm having too much fun discovering who I am when I'm not busy being who everyone needs me to be. Marcus joined the call from his den, and I could hear his boys playing in the background. Mom, I have to say, seeing you like this, it's incredible. You look 10 years younger. I feel 10 years younger, maybe 20, and we're doing fine here, by the way, in case you were wondering. Angela and I have been talking more actually, planning to get the kids together next month for a cousin playdate. Without me organizing it, I asked with a smile. Without you organizing it, he confirmed. Though I have to admit, it's harder than it looks. You made it seem so easy. That's because I had 40 years of practice. You'll get the hang of it. That night, I joined Ruth and her group for trivia night in the ship's lounge. We called ourselves the Golden Girls, and came in second place, winning a bottle of champagne that we shared while watching the stars from the observation deck. You know, said Margaret, the retired teacher from Scotland, I've been watching you this week, Dorothy. You've blossomed like a flower in sunshine. I think I was wilting without realizing it, I admitted, too much time in the shade of other people's needs. Why all do that, said Sarah, the young divorcee. I spent 10 years making myself smaller so my ex-husband could feel bigger. It's amazing what happens when you finally give yourself permission to take up space. To taking up space? Ruth raised her champagne glass. To taking up space? We all echoed. The next morning brought us to Jamaica, and I signed up for a cultural cooking class in Ocho Rios. I learned to make jerked chicken and rice and peas from a Jamaican grandmother named Miss Pearl, who reminded me of my own grandmother, the same no-nonsense attitude mixed with infinite warmth. You cook with love, yes? Miss Pearl asked as I stirred the rice. Always, I replied. Good, love is the most important ingredient, but you must remember to save some love for yourself too. Can't pour from an empty cup. I'm learning that lesson a little late in life. Never too late, child. I didn't start living for myself until my husband died and my children grew up. That was 15 years ago. Best 15 years of my life. What did you do? Everything I always wanted to do but thought I was too old for, too responsible for, too scared for. I learned to swim at 60, started my cooking school at 65, got my first tattoo at 70. She rolled up her sleeve to show me a beautiful hibiscus flower inked on her forearm. A tattoo at 70. Why not? My skin, my choice, my life, my adventure. Age is just a number, child. Don't let it become a prison. That afternoon, I found myself in a local tattoo parlor, staring at designs on the wall. The artist was a young man with gentle hands and an understanding smile. First tattoo? He asked. At 72. Yes, what speaks to you? I pointed to a small, delicate compass rose. That one. But can you put adventure awaits underneath it? Perfect choice. Where do you want it? I thought about Miss Pearl's hibiscus, bold and visible on her forearm. Then I thought about my own journey, my own courage that was still growing, my wrist, I said. Where I can see it every day. And an hour later, I walked out with a small bandage covering my first tattoo. At 72 years old, I had permanently marked my skin with a reminder that adventure was always possible, that it was never too late to change course. I sent a picture to my children. Mom, did you get a tattoo? I did. Do you like it? I don't know what to think. My proper, responsible mother got a tattoo in Jamaica. Your proper, responsible mother is learning to be improper and irresponsible sometimes. It's very liberating. Marcus's response came via text. Mum geo tattoo. My kids think their grandmother is the coolest person on the planet. Don't tell them I agree. That evening was the captain's gala dinner, the most formal night of the cruise. I wore my navy dress and the silver necklace from Cozumel, and I felt beautiful. Not beautiful for my age, just beautiful, period. At dinner, Giuseppe, the Italian chef, presented me with a small potted basil plant he'd somehow acquired during our port day. For you, Dorothy. Basilico for your garden at home. Every time you smell it, you remember that you are a woman of adventure. Giuseppe, that's so thoughtful. But how will I get it through customs? We figure it out together. Adventures always have solutions. The captain visited each table during dinner, and when he reached ours, Margaret introduced me as Dorothy, our group's late, blooming adventurer. First cruise? He asked in his charming British accent. First cruise, first passport, first time out of the United States, first tattoo. I listed off. I'm making up for lost time, first tattoo. His eyebrows rose in surprise. I showed him my bandaged wrist. Got it this afternoon in Jamaica. He threw back his head and laughed. Magnificent. I've been cruising for 30 years, and I can tell you that the passengers who inspire me most are the ones who use travel as an opportunity to surprise themselves. Clearly, you're a natural. After dinner, there was dancing in the ballroom. I'd planned to go back to my room and rest, but Sarah grabbed my hand. Come on, Dorothy. The band is playing Motown classics. You can't tell me you don't know how to dance to Motown. She was right. I knew every song, and my body remembered moves I hadn't used since Angela and Marcus were small, and I'd dance around the kitchen while making their breakfast. I danced with Giuseppe and with James, while his wife Patricia clapped encouragement, and with the ship's dance instructor, who complimented my natural rhythm. I danced by myself, arms raised to the sparkling lights of the ballroom, surrounded by new friends who cheered me on. At midnight, I stood on my balcony, still in my formal dress, watching the phosphorescent wake trail behind the ship like liquid starlight. My feet hurt from dancing, my face hurt from smiling, and my heart felt so full I thought it might burst. I touched the compass rose tattoo through its bandage. Adventure awaits. Tomorrow we would dock in Grand Cayman, my last port before heading home. But home would be different now because I was different. I was carrying pieces of Mexico and Jamaica, and the middle of the Caribbean Sea back with me. I was carrying the knowledge that Dorothy Mae Johnson was capable of more joy than she'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed with a message from Angela. Mom, I keep looking at that picture of your tattoo. I'm proud of you for doing something so completely unlike the mother I thought I knew. You're showing us all what courage looks like. And Marcus, Carmen wants to know if you'll teach her to make that jerk chicken when you get home. Also, the boys want to hear all your adventure stories. Also, I'm sorry it took us pushing you away for you to discover how amazing you are on your own. I typed back. I'm not the same woman who left Miami 4 days ago. I hope you're ready for the new version of your mother. She's a lot more fun, but she's also a lot less available to solve everyone else's problems. We're ready, Angela replied. We're proud, and we can't wait to meet her. As I prepared for bed, I realized something profound had happened. My family wasn't just tolerating my independence, they were celebrating it. They were proud of me for choosing myself, for refusing to be small, for taking up space in my own life. Maybe that's what love really looks like. Not the smothering, anticipatory care I'd been offering all these years, but the space to let each other grow even at 72. Even when growth means tattoos and solo travel, and saying no to being everyone's solution. Tomorrow, Grand Cayman. My last chance to surprise myself before heading home to a family that was learning to see me as more than just their reliable, predictable mother and grandmother. I was learning to see myself that way too. Grand Cayman was my final port of call, and I saved the best for last. I went snorkeling for the first time in my life, floating over coral reefs that looked like underwater gardens painted by angels. The water was so clear I could see tropical fish in colors that didn't seem real: electric blue tangs, yellow parrotfish, angelfish striped like living rainbows. Mira Sidora, called Carlos, our snorkel guide, pointing to a massive stingray gliding gracefully beneath us. My Hermosa, very beautiful, and it was. But lying there on the surface of that crystal clear water, breathing through a snorkel at 72 years old, I realized the most beautiful thing wasn't the stingray or the coral or even the Caribbean Sea stretching endlessly around us. It was the fact that I was there at all, that I had chosen adventure over safety, discovery over comfort, courage over fear. I took underwater pictures with a camera I'd rented from the ship's photo shop, another first. Pictures of myself floating in the Caribbean. My silver hair streaming behind me like seaweed, my face behind the mask lit up with pure joy. That evening, as the Caribbean princess began her journey back to Miami, I sat in the ship's library writing in the journal I'd bought but barely touched. 7 days of experiences to capture, 7 days of transformation to record. Day 19 learned I could make friends with strangers. Day 20 discovered I love sushi and line dancing. With day 30 spoke Spanish with real Spanish speakers in Mexico. A day 4 got my first tattoo in Jamaica, still can't believe I did that. Day 50 snorkeled in Grand Cayman and saw underwater rainbows. Day 60 tomorrow I go home. But I'm not the same woman who left. Ruth found me there, writing by the window as the sun set over waters I'd never see again. Sad to be going home? She asked, settling into the chair across from me. Not sad exactly, but different. I feel like I've been living someone else's life for so long that I forgot I had my own life to live. And now I remember. And I'm not going back to forgetting. What will you do differently? I considered the question. Everything. I'm going to keep taking Spanish classes. I'm going to travel more. Maybe that river cruise through Europe Giuseppe was telling us about. I'm going to join clubs and make friends and say yes to invitations, and no to being everyone's emergency contact for their emotional needs. Ruth laughed. Good for you, though I suspect your family is going to need some time to adjust to the new Dorothy. They're already adjusting. My son texted me today asking if I want to help plan a family gathering next month. Not do all the planning, but help with it. As a participant, not as the person in charge of making sure everyone else has a good time. Progress. Real progress. That night, I packed my suitcases with more than just clothes and souvenirs. I packed memories and confidence, and the knowledge that Dorothy Mae Johnson was capable of joy she'd never imagined. I packed the Spanish phrases I'd learned, and the courage I'd discovered, and the friends I'd made from around the world. I also packed Giuseppe's basil plant, which had somehow made it through 5 ports of call and was thriving in its little pot on my cabin's windowsill. A living reminder that beautiful things could survive transplanting if they were tended with love and given room to grow. The final morning brought us back to Miami's port. As I disembarked, walking down the same gangway I'd climbed a week ago, I felt like a different species of woman. I moved with confidence, spoke to strangers easily, carried myself like someone who belonged in the world, instead of someone who existed on its margins. Angela was waiting for me at the curb outside customs, and when she saw me, her mouth fell open. Mama, I laughed and hugged her tight. It's still me, baby. Just the version of me that was hiding under all that worry about everyone else. You look. She searched for words. Radiant. Like you're lit up from the inside. That's exactly how I feel. As we drove home, I told her about the snorkeling, and the dancing and the Spanish conversations, and the tattoo healing perfectly on my wrist. I showed her pictures on my phone, me laughing with my new friends, me standing proudly in front of Mayan ruins, me floating in Caribbean waters with arms spread wide like I was hugging the whole ocean. Mom, these pictures, you look like you're having the time of your life. I was. I really was. And you did all of this by yourself. I did it for myself. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I owe you an apology. For what? For not seeing how much of yourself you were sacrificing to take care of all of us. For not recognizing that you had dreams and desires of your own. For treating you like your only purpose was to be available for our needs. Oh, honey. No. Let me finish. Watching you these past 7 days, seeing the pictures, getting your texts about adventures and new friends and tattoos, I realized that I've never known my mother as a person. I've only known you as my mom, and that's my loss. We pulled into my driveway, and everything looked exactly the same. Same house, same garden, same mailbox. But I was seeing it all through different eyes. This wasn't just the place where I waited for my family to need me. This was my home, my sanctuary, the launching pad for whatever adventures came next. Will you help me bring my luggage in? I asked. And then I want to show you something. We carried my bags to my bedroom, and I pulled out the gifts I'd brought for everyone. The wooden dolphins for Maya, the woven bracelets for Zoe, the Mayan calendar replicas for Marcus's boys, a bottle of Jamaican spice rub for Angela and David to try. But then I showed her the things I'd bought for myself. The silver necklace with its turquoise pendant, a beautiful silk scarf from Grand Cayman, a set of Spanish learning CDs, a travel journal for planning my next adventure. You bought things for yourself, Angela observed, and there was wonder in her voice. I did. Revolutionary concept, right? For you. Yes, that evening. Marcus and his family drove down from Ohio, not because I'd organized it or guilted them into it, but because they wanted to hear my stories and see their changed mother and grandmother. We ordered pizza instead of me cooking an elaborate meal, and we sat in my living room while I showed them pictures and told them stories and let the grandchildren touch my healing tattoo with amazed fingers. Grandma got a tattoo, 10-year-old Jake announced to anyone who would listen. And she swam with fish, and she learned Spanish, and she looks happy, added his twin brother Sam. Really, really happy. I am really, really happy, I confirmed. Later, after the children were playing in the backyard and the adults were cleaning up from dinner, Marcus approached me in the kitchen. Mom, I need to say something. I braced myself, wondering if we were about to have another difficult conversation about boundaries and control. That night, I told you that you weren't invited to the vacation you paid for. That was the worst thing I've ever done. I've been carrying that guilt for weeks. Marcus. No, please let me finish. I thought I was protecting my independence, but I was really just being cruel to the person who'd sacrificed the most for my happiness. And the ironic thing is, seeing you like this, seeing you happy and confident and living your own life, it makes me love you more, not less. It makes me respect you more, not less. I needed to hear what you said that night. I needed to understand how my help was affecting you. But I didn't need to be so harsh about it. I could have explained without hurting you. You were protecting your family, your dignity. I understand that now. And you were protecting yours by taking that cruise, by showing us that you had a life outside of our needs. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do. We hugged in my kitchen, and it felt different than our usual hugs. Less desperate on my part, less obligated on his, more like two adults who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. So what's next? He asked. More cruises. More adventures. Definitely more adventures. I'm thinking about that European river cruise Giuseppe told me about. And I want to take more Spanish classes, maybe even spend a few weeks in a Spanish-speaking country practicing. Good for you. Really good for you. And Marcus? The next time you and Angela want to plan a family gathering, you can still ask for my input. But I'm not going to be the person who does all the work while everyone else shows up. If we're going to be together, we're all going to participate in making it happen. Deal, he said, grinning. Though I have to warn you, we're not as good at this stuff as you are. You'll learn, and if you don't, we'll just have pizza and paper plates and focus on being together instead of having everything perfect. Sounds perfect to me. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my quiet house with a cup of tea and Giuseppe's basil plant on the windowsill beside me. The house felt different now. Not empty or waiting, but peaceful. Complete. I was the same woman who'd lived here for 30 years, but I was also someone entirely new. I was Dorothy Mae Johnson, world traveler. Dorothy Mae Johnson, Spanish speaker. Dorothy Mae Johnson, woman who got tattoos in Jamaica and snorkeled in Grand Cayman and made friends with strangers from around the globe. I was also still Dorothy Mae Johnson, loving mother and devoted grandmother. But those roles were part of my identity now, not the entirety of it. My phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. Made it home safely. Already missing our Golden Girls trivia team. I texted back, home safe and changed forever. When do we plan our next adventure? Her response came immediately. How does that European river cruise sound? Giuseppe gave me the brochure too. We could be the Golden Girls of the Danube. I laughed out loud in my quiet kitchen. 6 months ago. If someone had told me I'd be planning international travel with friends I'd met on a cruise ship, I would have thought they were crazy. Now it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I pulled out my laptop and started researching river cruises through Europe. Budapest to Amsterdam, castles and vineyards and Christmas markets. Another adventure, another chance to discover what else Dorothy Mae Johnson was capable of. But first, tomorrow I would call the community center and sign up for intermediate Spanish classes. I would call the travel agency and get information about solo travel groups. I would water Giuseppe's basil plant and plan my own week, instead of organizing everyone else's schedule. I would continue the work of living my own life, the work I'd started in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, when I realized that loving others didn't require sacrificing myself. At 72 years old, I was just getting started, and my family, instead of resenting my independence, was cheering me on. They were proud of me for choosing myself, for refusing to be small, for taking up space in my own life. Maybe that's what real love looks like, not the desperate need to be needed, but the generous space to let each other grow, even at 72, even when growth means tattoos and solo travel and saying no to being everyone's solution. I touched the compass rose on my wrist, now fully healed and permanently part of me. Adventure awaits, it always has. I just needed the courage to answer when it called my name, and now, finally, I was ready for whatever came next.